What will the final version of the tax bill mean for you and your investments? Andrew Friedman is principal at the Washington Update, and he joins us to discuss. It looks, Andy, like the Senate and the House have threaded a needle here to keep people happy, to come in under that $1.5 trillion number that made them able to pass it with just simple majorities.
That's true. And you really, I think, encapsulated what was going on here. Under the Senate rules, this legislation couldn't lose more than $1.5 trillion over 10 years. The corporate tax cut, which is the centerpiece of this bill, dropping the tax rate from 35% to 21%, costs about $1.5 trillion over 10 years. So they got what they needed, which was to cut taxes on corporations, which the Trump administration at least believes will expand the economy and help workers as well. Everything else in the bill was a trade-off. For every dollar of taxes cut, there had to be a dollar of taxes increased to stay within that number.
So you point to, and I think most people agree with you, that this is mostly a big tax cut for businesses and large corporations.
Yes.
The individuals get some cuts as well, low and middle income, but those tax cuts sunset a few years from now.
That's right. In order to make this all work and to keep it within the parameters, there wasn't a lot left over for individuals. So there is a small tax cut for up and down the income line for individuals, but those had to expire to make the numbers work. The key was to keep the corporate tax cut permanent. The administration said that was necessary because businesses have to plan many years in the future. Individuals, they said, well, when the time comes, we think Congress will extend those cuts as well, but we have to leave those in the wind, if you will, in order to make it work now.
One of the gnarliest areas in those corporate tax cuts has to do with the international side of the business. Number one, being able to bring back some of the profits that are held overseas, trillions of dollars there,
yes,
and also going to a different kind of regime that the administration and the GOP believe will cause more companies to stay domiciled in the U.S. Explain, and do you agree?
Yes, let me just talk for a second about what's going on there. Right now, as of today, before this new law, we have a very unusual tax system. If you're a U.S.-based company, you set up a subsidiary overseas to sell your products. So Coca-Cola sets up a company in France to sell soda. The earnings of that subsidiary aren't taxed in the U.S. as long as they remain with the subsidiary overseas. But if that subsidiary repatriates the earnings back to the U.S. parent company, right now we impose a 35% tax. That means that companies are leaving their earnings overseas to avoid that tax. And that's presumably is not as good for our economy. So what the tax bill does is it does two changes here. First, with respect to future earnings overseas from the beginning of the year on, those can be brought back now without any tax whatsoever. Big benefit for multinational companies, bring back future earnings. With respect to existing earnings, those will be brought back at a lower tax rate, say around 14% or so. That brings in a little revenue for the government
Right.
that they weren't going to get anyway, and it also brings the money back here.
Andy, thank you very much. Appreciate the explanations. Andrew Friedman with the Washington Update.